Opening up the Peacock and Williamson mailbag. We've got questions on the NFL draft, new coaching hires, how those hires affect the NFL draft, and did the Cowboys and Eagles make the right decision sticking with their head coaches? All that and more coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. That's where most of today's questions come from on Twitter. You can also drop a question any old week for our Wednesday mailbags on the YouTube comments. Make sure you're subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast, because we're coming at you every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code, all lowercase, LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Here we go. Let's start with the latest official coaching hire. Some rumors happening today about Harbaugh. In fact, he's meeting now as we record with the Chargers. Might have big news on that one tomorrow. But Brian Callahan is the guy for the Tennessee Titans. And we covered that yesterday on the podcast. But we have a question here that ties in now. Do you have a direction as a franchise? This one from Michael on Twitter. And he says, now with new head coach and his experience in Cincinnati, obviously offensive tackle is a huge need for the Titans in the draft, but should they pull a Bengals move and grab one of the big three wide receivers at pick number 7? And Michael says, I'm not even a Titans fan. Just keep thinking about this. And look, that was, do you remember the draft that year? And it was 2021, right? And everyone's like,
Jake's first school. Yeah.
Penei Sewell to the Bengals, write it in ink, don't write it in pencil. They needed a tackle so bad. And they said, nope. The better player, the more impactful player for us is actually Jamar Chase. And it's hard to argue with their decision. If they would have drafted Sewell, he's been awesome for the Lions right now. The Lions are in the NFC Championship game, and he's been phenomenal. So really, I think they could not have made a bad choice in that situation. But it's sort of a two-tiered. Did the Bengals make the right decision now that we have 3 years to look back on it? And should the Titans maybe do the same thing at pick number 7?
Yeah, it's interesting. And also found it interesting, off our conversation yesterday, that Rand Carthon got bumped in terms of his title. Now he's something vice president, executive, something. So obviously he's won the power struggle there, is how that worked out. So let's talk about that Bengals draft. So Burrow and Higgins were the draft before, and Higgins was promising, but he was coming off a rookie season. They had a receiver, not Higgins hadn't his prime, but he had a good rookie year, and they had trouble with their O-line for years. And Burrow
had Boyd. They still had Boyd too.
They still had Boyd. Right. So
need
Boyd was in his prime,
way over wide receiver.
Yes, exactly. And Burrow got beat up bad his rookie year. You got to invest in, saving your first overall pick. He looks great, but he's taking a beating. Sewell versus Chase, on and on and on. Frankly, in this situation, I mean, if we're building teams right now, in their third years, after their third years, he's my first, second, third receiver drafted. He's my first, second, third tackle drafted. They're both elite players, and there wasn't a wrong answer. But I do think, as a rule of thumb, and this applies more to the Titans, not knowing that both are going to be superstars, I just think tackles are harder to find. I mean, it comes out of supply and demand sometimes.
It's funny, and Penei Sewell led the league in PFF grades for tackles this year, and I've had some. I've had some. Obviously, Locked On 49ers podcast that I do every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you check it out. A lot of Lions fans jumping in and saying, hey, Penei Sewell is even better than Trent Williams. And I'm like, well, okay, slow down on that. Penei Sewell is a really good player and coming into his own, and that's a good offensive line there with the Detroit Lions. And if you did a redraft,
next in line.
Right. And if you did a redraft, would either one of those guys be available at 5? Probably not.
No. right. I mean, they're elite prospects. We thought they were, and Penei Sewell they both came in. That was the COVID year too. Because remember, neither one played the year before, which is really bizarre.
Right.
And the last time we saw them both, they were kicking everyone's butts when they were 18. I mean, they were true freshmen winning LSU national titles with Justin Jefferson on the other side and Edwards-Helaire and Burrow. And Penei Sewell was this 18-year-old just beating up on people. So really weird year when you factor in the COVID situation.
Yeah. In fact, that draft goes Lawrence probably stays at the top, but then it's Parsons, Sewell, and Chase. Those are the top 4 picks, probably.
Whatever order you want them. Yeah. I would say
it's hard to learn from that. And obviously that's a small sample anyway. To go back to the Titans situation and looking at their draft board right now, what they're doing, I think a lot of that decision is going to be made for them because they're at 7, and very likely it's going to be clear that, the best tackle's still there and the receiver's still there, and so that's an easy decision. I would probably lean towards offensive tackle. I think it's probably the way it goes because it's not going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. that you're choosing from at pick number 7, might be Odunze versus
Neighbors
or whoever. Yeah. So I would bet it's offensive tackle. I think Ty still goes to offensive tackle, but wide receivers, the money is going up and up and up for wide receivers. And it is a difference position now, the way teams are treating that position. But to me, if you have a huge need at both, who's the best player, I think is what you land on. And I think that's what the Bengals landed on. It's like, well, Chase has a better grade. He's a rarer guy for us, and we can figure out offensive line, but this guy might be special. I think that's what the Bengals are thinking. If you think that about a wide receiver, then take him. But I'd probably lean OT.
I should have mentioned this earlier, but I bet the tiebreaker in Cincinnati was Burrow and Chase played together and they won a national title,
Right. Yeah. Input, we hear that a lot because you don't really think about the input that the players give you. And
right.
Yeah. And Burrow's probably a tough guy. Like, whatever, I'll take hits. I don't care.
I think that is exactly how it went. Like, I'll take the hits. I don't care. Just give me my buddy Chase because we'll light the world on fire. And he wasn't wrong. Then they were. Right. It worked out quite well. Mel Kiper put out his first mock of the year, which is like a annual, rite of passage in the NFL when Mel puts out his first one. And I listened to the podcast that was tied into it, and he called it something like his nifty 9. That there's 9. All offense stud players in this draft. There's the 3 quarterbacks. There's those 3 receivers, the tackle situation, Brock Bowers, and they all have really high grades, so Neighbors versus, Fasciano or versus Alt versus, Rome, they're all pretty close. It's not too far off Chase versus Penei Sewell,
It's going to be fascinating. NFL draft season for a lot of teams out there, including the Titans now, and they have a new direction. A new offensive coordinator with the Chicago Bears, Matt. Let's get to that question next about the Bears. What's their plan? Should it be Fields? Should it be Caleb Williams? Should they double dip in the NFL draft? Should they just go all in on QB and figure the stinking position out once and for all? And tons more questions in the Peacock and Williamson mailbag next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers at Prize Picks, more or less than the stat projections on 2 to 6 players, and watch those winnings roll in. There's no sharks in the pool. You're not battling thousands of other players, including pros in there that are trying to steal your cash, right? It's more or less than the stat projections at Prize Picks. And if you hit 6 of 6, I'm talking 25 times your money this football season. All you got to do, select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and your entry is done. Turn $10 into $250. There's NBA plus NFL combo bets. There is a reboot policy. It's the only DFS platform with an injury reboot policy. If your player gets hurt in the first half, doesn't return in the second half, that player is rebooted. And all you got to do is go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Download the app or go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. And that promo code again is LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports, made easy. Chicago Bears There's one Bears question in every mailbag for us, Matt, and it's
they're the most interesting team in the offseason.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And once the Super Bowl is over, they're going to dominate the offseason. And I think you and I both are team like Justin Fields, didn't show enough, draft Caleb Williams at 1, right?
Yes, I am. I mean, and not a lot of it's not even Justin Fields' fault.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, we get a lot of feedback on it's actually pretty wild. And I love Justin Fields coming out, and I still think he's got some potential. And I wish he went to a situation with a better, staff in place, better team in place around him. But there's just some things that you don't see consistently enough. Quick decision making, the short game, getting the ball out on time to open receivers, and some of it is on his shoulders. You got to make those plays that are there. When Luke Getsy did make the right call, right? But Luke Getsy out. They brought in Shane Waldron as the new offensive coordinator, from Pete Carroll's now fired coaching staff there in Seattle. So we'll see if that fixes some things for Justin Fields if they stay with Justin Fields. I still think better than 50% chance that Fields gets traded elsewhere, and I still have some hope for Fields, and I'd be really excited to see where he goes and how that looks. Like, say, the Pittsburgh Steelers, just throwing a team out,
right?
Atlanta Falcons. There's some good landing spots for Justin Fields.
Super quick, BP. If the Niners didn't have a quarterback, you'd be interested in trading for Fields, right? I mean, I don't think he stinks. The
Niners should have drafted Fields at 3 instead of Trey Lance in the first place. Like, Fields was my guy.
I like him too. Yeah.
One of the fascinating things about Fields, and I've asked this question before on the podcast, is he the most talented quarterback that was trying to be good that has failed for the most part? Because we're seeing all these really talented quarterbacks that have that much athleticism, that much arm talent, eventually figure it out and become stars in the NFL. And most draft busts, it's because, they don't care that much. They're not working. They're not smart. They're not leaders, whatever it is. Fields seems to have every ingredient you need. So how come it's not working? And that's why Bears fans are so adamant. Most Bears fans are like, we want Fields, and it's all Getsy. It's all environment. It's offensive coordinator only. That's fixed. We want Fields. We want to trade out of number 1 again. I don't know if it's going to go that way again. Ryan Poles, the GM, said this is different than last year, and they're going to take it down to April. So we'll see what ends up happening there. But the interesting part of this question from Sweaty Vetter, fantastic name, by the way.
Oh, that's good.
If the Bears decide to move on from Fields, should they consider taking quarterbacks at both 1 and pick number 9, since they have 2 top 10 picks in this draft, especially if Daniels somehow falls at number 9 with such a low hit rate at the position? Shouldn't teams be taking as many shots at finding the guy as possible? And it's the second part of that I find fascinating. It's like, okay, if it's a coin flip the coin twice, and the Bears cannot figure out quarterback for our lifetimes. Figure it out, Bears. Keep Fields too, and draft, but figure out quarterback, please, for the love of God.
Yeah, I know this sounds bonkers. I mean, first of all, I don't think he's going to fall to 10, but hypothetically, you could get to 10, and the nifty 9 are gone, and everyone else no one's standing out, and you move down to 17 and pick up a future pick, and then you take Bo Nix or Penix or McCarthy or somebody like that after taking Williams first overall. So I know this sounds like a ludicrous question. Why would you guys even answer this? But I think there's a lot of logic behind it. I mean, until you have one, bite that apple over and over and over. I mean, it's too hard to find them. A crazy conversation. You could go into camp conceivably with Fields, Williams, and Nix, which would be insane. But week 2 of the preseason, you could trade one. It doesn't mean you can't trade them after you found you're the one that's the hit.
Yeah, and it's not going to happen with 2 first-rounders. And
no.
But I think the point is, how about RG3 and Kirk Cousins? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Draft another guy later and see who's there for you. Don't give up on just the one guy. Like keep taking bites at the apple. And for other teams that already have a quarterback, keep drafting quarterbacks. Get a backup quarterback. We saw too many teams this year that didn't have a good backup quarterback situation, and their seasons are riding on Tommy Cutlets, and
right.
Just name a weird starting quarterback that shouldn't have been starting games in the NFL.
Sure.
This year. You don't want to come down to that. And you might find a Brock Purdy. You might find Kirk
Dak Prescott.
Yeah, you might find Dak Prescott. Exactly. So that's the point that I wanted to bring up with this tweet. They're not going to draft 2 first-round quarterbacks, but there's some logic to it. Find a stinking quarterback and get it right, because it might not be that top 3 quarterback that everyone is tying their hopes to.
I mean, even during the Favre and Rodgers era, during the Brady era, those teams drafted Hasselbeck, Garoppolo, guys that were Brissett, second, third round picks that end up being good quarterbacks elsewhere. Like, this guy's a good player. We're going to take him, and just, even though he has no chance to unseat the Hall of Famer, there's a lot of that in history. I mean, like, I'm sure people don't even remember this, but Jimmy Johnson takes over the Cowboys. First overall pick, they take Troy Aikman. A month or two later in the supplemental draft, they take Walsh, who was Johnson's quarterback at the U, and that cost them a future first. So they really used like 2 first-round picks and had a flat-out quarterback competition between Walsh and Aikman. And that would sound brilliant if Walsh was the first overall pick and he busted. And everyone kind of forgets about the supplemental. If it had gone the other way around, if Aikman had been the supplemental pick and he's the Hall of Famer, like, boy, how smart was Johnson to back that up? Like, it's not that crazy.
Man, I miss the days of having a supplemental draft that was worth paying attention to. That
right, Chris Carter.
There's not enough weirdness in the college game with those late entries.
There's
into
enough weirdness, but
draft.
Yeah.
Well, there's plenty of weirdness. It's just not that weird summer draft that pops up out of nowhere, and there's actually a player worth taking and spending that high of a pick on.
Someone fails out or gets in trouble and goes into the supplemental draft or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Taking a look at here's an interesting question here about since we're on draft stuff, and you mentioned Brady and you mentioned some past eras. How about this with what's going on with the Buffalo Bills now, and another heartbreak, another wide right this week? Are the Bills the 2000s Steelers? James on Twitter asks. Generational quarterback, Roethlisberger, Josh Allen. Mm-hmm. Great team building, but somewhat underachieving because they never were able to slay the dragon, Brady, Patriots, Mahomes, Chiefs, in the playoffs.
I think there's a lot of similarities. I mean, unfortunately, I was actually talking about this because Steelers played the Bills, obviously, just in the wild card round, and talked about, this could be the team that is much like the Steelers during the Brady era. But unfortunately, the era before went to 4 Super Bowls. The Steelers won them all. The Bills lost them all. So you don't walk past any trophies in the Bills facility where there's 6 of them in the Steelers facility. So the history of the teams are a little different. But, I mean, I'm not tooting the Steelers' horns here, but you can look it up. I mean, during the Brady era, the second most successful team in the league was the Steelers. Like Seattle's right there. There's a couple teams that were quite strong. But for that duration, basically the whole Roethlisberger era, they were really good, but they were the bridesmaid. I mean, I think it's like, I don't blame Patrick Ewing for not unseating Jordan in the East. You know what I mean? And I don't know NBA history, but the Bulls went to the finals every year, and Patrick Ewing stuck there runner up. Like sometimes you just get stuck behind a goat.
Brett, you can't get past them. And unfortunately for the Bills and Josh Allen, that's the way things have gone. But he's got what? How old is Josh Allen? 20, late 20s? 27, 28, right? 27,
28, yeah.
How quarterbacks play to 40, right? So you got at least 10 more years. You got 10 more shots in your late 30s.
Let me stop you, though. Okay. I mean, if I were to compare him to any quarterback in history, it'd probably be a combination of Roethlisberger. Yeah, people forget not fat Ben. I'm talking, or 80-year-old Ben. I'm talking about young Ben, shrugging off to
Ben,
young and back
and couldn't sack him, and
he was like a tree trunk, just he's shrugging off Terrell Suggs. But a combination of Ben and Cam Newton. And I hope that Allen's career doesn't Cam Newton out a year or two from now, because of the beating he takes.
That's true. So let's say you only get half a dozen more shots at it. Can you get one? You got to get past them one time, because even in the Brady era, Breeze only got one, Aaron Rodgers only got one. It's it's difficult. So still young,
like Lamar is the exact same case,
right? Yeah.
Like if he doesn't do it this year, no promises.
The exact same question next week at this time if the Chiefs beat the Ravens about Lamar.
100%. Super successful. They haven't won a playoff game in a while before this year. Like, I love phrasing it this way. Hey, BP, do you think Trevor Lawrence will ever win a Super Bowl? Maybe. Do you think Justin Herbert will ever win a Super Bowl? Maybe. How about Joe Burrow?
Joe Burrow, right?
Yeah, probably. How about Lamar? Oh, yeah. How about Allen? Oh, definitely. What are you talking about? How about Stroud? Oh, he's going to be here for 20 years. Of course he will. The answer is probably half of them will win one.
This isn't a plate of chicken wings at a night out where everyone gets to dip in and have one, right?
Right.
Patrick Mahomes going to sit there.
Mahomes isn't retiring
on the plate, and everyone else is like, "Where's my chicken?
Only one gets it every year, and only one from the AFC. Those are all AFC teams.
Right.
I mean, Ben got 2. I mean, is that? I don't know if that's underachieving. If Allen gets 2, if Stroud gets 2, I think you take it.
Yeah, Eli got 2 in there.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, but you got to slay the
Rodgers
dragon.
has 1. Breeze has 1.
Yeah.
Joe
Flacco has 1.
Mm-hmm. Peyton has 2, but 1 was with the Broncos at the end.
Yeah, Peyton, that's another one because he only got 2.
Only 2.
And only 1 with the Colts.
I mean, he might be the best quarterback ever. I mean, he's in the conversation.
Yeah. Next, satellite wide receivers. Are we in? Are we out on the diminutive, speedy receivers that have been a recent trend high in the NFL draft? And Eagles, Cowboys, are they making the right decisions on their franchises going forward? Next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, style, eBay Motors has you covered. Which was that easy for NFL GM to be like, yeah, I need the superpower. I need that Jamar, I need that Penei Sewell, right? But you can get the Penei Sewell and the Jamar Chase for your vehicle at eBay Motors. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. And I've used it. I love eBay Motors. There's a green check. Could not be easier. You order it and it fits when it arrives. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, you're burning rubber and not cash. So keep your car on the road at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. What do you think about satellite wide receivers? The Tank Dells, the Tutu Atwells, Matt. Our question here is from Young O Genius on Twitter. And basically he says, given the recent history of the last few drafts and all of the smaller, speedy, quote unquote, satellite wide receivers, are you a draft or avoid those types in the first 3 rounds after we've seen a little bit of results and the league's always gone away from those in the past? But the last couple of years, we've seen some results and we've seen some really nice players be drafted. What do you think? Satellite receivers, you in and out on day 1 and 2?
It's a great question for my timeline because I'm currently in flux. I did all the dynasty stuff and actually recorded one this morning. Go check that out. We did Matt's mailbag today. That's every Wednesday. And I admittedly have been extremely prejudiced against the tiny guys. Like leading up to rookie drafts this year, I'm like, you can have a Chan. You can have Tank Dell. I want nothing to do with those guys. They're just way too little. But they both were super productive. They both got hurt. So I wasn't 100% wrong. Bryce Young, I lumped in there. Like obscenely small people, I don't believe in my core, are meant to last playing football for 17 games and playoffs on and on and on. But the league has done a really good job of protecting them more than ever. And explosiveness goes a very, very long way. And game-changing players and explosives are what, defensive coordinators fear most. So sprinkled in, yes. I fear the Dolphins have taken it too far. That they have a bunch of Lamborghinis out there that can't play in the snow. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they need a mix in a Hummer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Even a bulldozer. I mean, even a nice Mercedes sedan. It kind of do everything.
It's nice if you get both at the same time.
Sure.
But that's hard to find. So when you get past that portion of the draft, I would lean toward let's go another direction. If the right guy's there and we're talking outside of the top 50 picks, then I'm starting to be a little bit more on board. But Hollywood Brown is like, I'm not spending a first round pick on a Hollywood Brown. I'm not, Tutu Atwell went, I think, way too high, but we've seen some big games from him. But he hasn't been probably what the draft pick, what you would want from a wide receiver taken at that portion of the draft. Tank Dell was fantastic. Is it because his quarterback was so good? It's because his offense was playing at a high level. Then he gets hurt because he's in the trees. And
near the goal line. And all right,
Achan, it's even more going down the road of the running back value debate too, because now, we get a guy. He led the league in yards per carry for running backs with however many carries.
Stuff, yeah.
And it's like, he's so good. We want to keep giving him the ball. Well, now he's just more likely to get hurt then. So you have to dial yourself back knowing that you got a part-time player. So if you're okay with that, you're probably not going to be.
And he can't become a tell. Every time he's on the field, you can't give him the ball. Right. Here comes an end around to a Chan, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't. There's a fine line there. Yeah.
So, it's tough. It's sort of like a rotational pass rusher. Rotational pass rushers fall because they can't stop the run and they don't get drafted in the first round. And they get drafted in the third, fourth, fifth round. And so it depends where. Third round, I'm starting to be more okay with it. You're talking about a top 50 pick. I'm out on the satellite wide receivers.
I lean that way, but I'm more open to it than I was 5-10 years ago, Williamson.
Yes. And it's a different game too. Like you can operate. I've talked about this before on Locked On 49ers with, just the all the Shanahan offenses that are around the league. And it's a basically the newest hottest scheme in the NFL is the hospital ball offense, because it couldn't have happened. It couldn't have happened 20 years ago, but now it can happen. And it's a space throwing the ball in the middle of the fields, guys in breaking towards safeties and linebackers where they would have been decapitated in the past. And now it's
running full speed.
Yeah. And now it's your game plan to make those throws.
Yep. That's one thing I would say. There's not Jack Tatum in the middle of the field just illegally taking people's heads off. I mean, that's been banned and that's huge. But the other problem with running backs that are tiny is if they can't pass protect, the whole planet knows it. And then all of a sudden, he's going out for a ride. You can become a tell pretty easy.
Cowboys and Eagles. I love this question from Scott because especially when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys. Scott says, do you think the Eagles and Cowboys made the right decision at head coach, keeping both of their head coaches? Obviously, the Eagles fired both offensive and defensive coordinators, kept head coach Nick Sirianni. They're looking for new coordinators for the second straight year on both sides of the ball. The fascinating one to me was the Cowboys, because and maybe you can think of one. I tried and I'm coming up empty. Can you remember a time when a team put out a press release that they were keeping their head coach? That's what
I don't pay much attention to that, but right. It says a lot about the ownership. It says a lot about the organization.
And it also says that, hey, we thought about it. We thought hard about it, but we're going to keep this guy.
Right. So maybe
don't tell you when teams are about to fire a guy, they don't tell you. They just come out and someone asks and they say, oh. No, 100% in on this guy. Even if they were like 51-49% in votes to keep a head coach, you never. So fascinating to me, and it tells me they made the wrong decision if they had to put out a press release saying that they're keeping their head coach.
It's like the mafia. The guy you trust most sticks the ice pick in your head. You never see it coming. But I want to tease this for tomorrow, because tomorrow's not our usual Thursday 6-pack and whatnot. Should we lump the Bills in that conversation?
Oh,
the Eagles fell apart at the end. They started getting crappy months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Dallas had one awful game. The Bills have had the same recurring thing every year. My short answer is I think all three organizations made the right decision, but in all those seats should not be ice cold by any stretch.
I didn't think about the Bills head coach.
You don't think about that
being warm, but that is a good teaser for tomorrow's episode. I think we might get some big coaching news as well by Thursday here, with still some whales out there swimming around that are being hunted by some of these NFL teams.
Want to get harpooned or not, though.
Right. Right. And one of our listeners put it this way about the Cowboys Mike McCarthy situation is, how many times can you roll through a season with Dak with different coaches and get the same exact results and not look there too?
Oh, I know. I mean, that's another conversation. And Allen's going to get lumped in, and if Lamar loses, he's going to get lumped in. And Herbert's a loser, and Dak's a loser. When are they ever going to win one? Lawrence is going to get in that category soon. It's tough to comment on. I mean, is it coach, is it owner, or is it Dak, or is it the trio of them all? If Dak was in Chicago, would they win the Super Bowl? I mean, who knows?
Next on tomorrow's show, more coaching news. We're going to get deeper into the Buffalo Bills as well, who have been eliminated. How do you fix the Buffalo Bills? All these eliminated football teams and some of the newly hired head coach, new direction teams, how to get those teams on the right track and potentially overtake Patrick Mahomes and slay the Dragons. How do these teams get to where they want to be in the NFL? Thanks to all the questions out there. It's tons of great ones. Apologies to the ones we did not get to. It's NFC Championship week. We're making picks and previewing those games as well. Coming up right here, Peacock and Williamson.